Lieutenant Kayla Vrynn of the Anderland Survey Corps had spent her life studying civilizations and legends from across the galaxy. Most of her work involved cataloging myths and extrapolating them into sociological data. She had traversed hundreds of star systems, analyzed thousands of cultural archives, and yet there was one legend she never thought she'd encounter firsthand: the myth of the Solari. The Solari were whispered about in old human folklore, a species said to exist before the earliest human records, beings capable of immense strength and cunning, thought extinct for millennia. Most scholars dismissed the Solari as bedtime stories for children or allegories for human morality. Kayla, a pragmatist through and through, had always agreed. Mythology was interesting, yes, but reality rarely bent to fit fantasy. That belief shattered the day her ship, the Astronomad, responded to a distress beacon from the uncharted star system designated PX 237. The beacon was faint, irregular, and emanated a signature unlike anything Kayla had cataloged before. Her mission was simple: investigate and report. She didn't expect to confront something that could rewrite human history. PX 237's primary planet, a frozen wasteland orbiting a dim orange star, appeared lifeless from orbit. The scan showed anomalies beneath the ice, large subterranean structures, geometric and unmistakably artificial. Kayla's pulse quickened. Artificial structures this deep in a previously uninhabited system suggested either an extremely advanced civilization or something far older, buried and forgotten. She descended with a small team of engineers and xenobiologists. The wind cut through her suit's outer layer, a biting chill that seemed almost purposeful, like the planet itself was trying to deter intruders. After hours of slogging through knee-deep snow, they reached the coordinates of the beacon. The ground gave way to a concealed hatch, frost-crusted and rusted, but intact. Kayla's gloved hand brushed aside the ice. With a hiss of pressurized gas, the hatch opened, revealing a metallic staircase descending into darkness. The team flicked on their lights, revealing walls etched with indecipherable symbols, glowing faintly with a phosphorescent blue. It was a language unlike any known human or alien script. The deeper they went, the more Kayla felt an almost instinctive unease, as if the air itself recognized an intruder. The engineers called it radiation interference. The biologists called it extreme subterranean pressure, but Kayla knew it was something older, something alive. Hours into exploration, they reached a vast cavern. The walls were lined with massive statues, tall, humanoid, each holding intricate weapons, yet their faces were obscured beneath elaborate helmets. But it wasn't the size or craftsmanship that made Kayla's breath hitch. It was the unmistakable tiger markings etched across their chests. 3 vertical lines, identical to the Solari symbol from ancient Earth myths. "This can't be," Kayla murmured. "It's impossible." Dr. Renko, her xenobiologist, leaned closer. "Are you saying these are the Solari?" Kayla shook her head. "I thought it was just a myth, a story humans told themselves to explain courage. But these markings, this architecture, matches every description we've ever dismissed as legend." The team pressed forward, discovering rows of chambers, each filled with hibernation pods. Inside some, indistinct shapes shifted, preserved in a translucent gel that kept them alive for centuries. Kayla's mind raced. The Solari weren't extinct. They had been lying dormant. Waiting for what? Before they could investigate further, the cavern trembled. A deep, resonant vibration filled the space, accompanied by a guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The team froze as the gel pods began to open, revealing figures, tall, muscular humanoids with feline eyes that glimmered even in the dim light, skin patterned with the same tiger markings. Their movements were fluid, predatory, and terrifyingly intelligent. Kayla's heart pounded. This was no simulation, no relic. They were alive. The Solari had awakened. One of the beings stepped forward, eyes locking on Kayla. In a voice that resonated in her mind rather than her ears, it spoke. "You should not have come here." Kayla, ever the diplomat, raised her hands slowly. "I mean no harm. We only came because of the distress beacon." The Solari tilted its head, studying her with an intensity that was almost unbearable. Then, in a gesture that suggested curiosity rather than hostility, it extended a clawed hand. "You are human. Rare. Why do you seek us?" Kayla swallowed hard. "To learn. To understand. We thought you were a myth." A ripple of amusement passed through the group of Solari. The being stepped closer. "Myth is a word humans use for truth they cannot yet comprehend." Over the next several hours, Kayla engaged in a dialogue unlike any she had experienced. Through a combination of mental projection and crude universal symbols, the Solari revealed their history. They were guardians, created during the early evolution of humanity by an unknown precursor race. Their purpose had been to test, guide, and, if necessary, protect humanity from threats both internal and external. When humanity spread beyond Earth, the Solari had withdrawn, hiding themselves and allowing humans to forge their own path, confident in the species' potential. Kayla absorbed every word, realizing the scope of what she had uncovered. Humanity had not only been influenced by these beings, they had been watched, guided, and sometimes shaped by them for millennia. The legends weren't stories. They were records of encounters long forgotten, misinterpreted as myths. Yet not all was benevolent. The Solari had enemies, ancient entities that had pursued them across the cosmos. Those enemies were now aware of the humans, drawn to the Solari's reawakening. Kayla understood immediately that by finding them, she had also invited danger to Earth and human colonies. One of her engineers, trembling, whispered, "We need to leave. Now." But Kayla hesitated. This was a discovery that could redefine human history, philosophy, and science. Leaving meant abandoning knowledge that could save billions, or doom them. Before a decision could be made, the cavern shook violently. The Solari tensed, muscles coiling like springs. From fissures in the walls, shadowed forms emerged, creatures of darkness, sleek and predatory, their eyes glowing with malice. The Solari moved with precision, forming a protective circle around Kayla's team. "What are they?" Kayla shouted, adrenaline surging. "Hunters. Ancient rivals," the leading Solari responded. "They will not stop until all of us are destroyed, or until their hunger is sated." The ensuing battle was both horrific and awe-inspiring. The Solari moved like living weapons, claws and teeth lashing, bodies striking with coordinated ferocity that even Kayla's trained mind struggled to comprehend. The darkness creatures were relentless, their shrieks and howls echoing through the cavern. Kayla, caught in the midst, realized that survival would depend on trust. She took a deep breath. "If I want to live, I follow them." The Solari acknowledged her silently, and she mirrored their movements as best she could, ducking, dodging, and retreating under their protective cover. The battle raged for what felt like hours. Many of the dark creatures were destroyed, their forms dissipating into shadows that hissed and vanished. Kayla's team sustained injuries, but the Solari's intervention ensured no deaths. After the battle, the cavern was silent except for the heavy breathing of the Solari and the human crew. Kayla knelt, examining the remnants of the fallen. Her hands shook, not only from fear but from the realization of what she had witnessed. These beings, once thought to be fantasy, were guardians, warriors, and possibly the key to humanity's survival against threats yet unknown. The Solari leader approached her. "You have seen what many humans cannot. You have witnessed truth, and you have survived. The choice now is yours." Kayla looked at her team. They were battered, shaken, and in awe. "What choice?" she asked. "To remain hidden," the Solari said. "Or to return to your kind, bearing knowledge that could change the course of history. But know this, knowledge comes with responsibility. Once revealed, there is no undoing it." Kayla thought of humanity, its potential, its flaws, its boundless curiosity. She had spent her life cataloging myths, analyzing legends, and dismissing tales as mere stories. Now, she stood at the threshold of a revelation that could unite, inspire, and terrify all at once. We will return," she said, her voice steady despite the weight of what she was saying. "The humans must know the truth." The Solari nodded, almost imperceptibly, then stepped back into the shadows. "Then prepare. For once humans know, the galaxy will never be the same." Kayla and her team left PX 237, returning to the Astra Nomad. The journey home was quiet, each member lost in thought. Kayla stared at the distant stars, imagining the stories that would now have to be rewritten. Humanity had survived countless trials, wars, and catastrophes, but now they faced a revelation that might redefine everything they thought they knew about themselves. When they reached Earth, Kayla presented her findings to the United Interstellar Council. Skepticism was rampant, debates were heated, and yet the evidence, holographic scans, samples, and records of mental projection, was undeniable. Slowly, the myth of the Solari became accepted as fact, prompting a renaissance of exploration, philosophy, and scientific inquiry. Kayla often returned in her mind to the frozen planet of PX 237. She thought of the Solari, guardians of humanity who had remained hidden for eons. She wondered what other myths, dismissed as fiction, might contain seeds of truth waiting to be discovered. One night, as she walked through the council's observation deck, Kayla felt a familiar presence, subtle and watching, like a ripple through the fabric of reality itself. The tiger-marked figure appeared at the edge of her vision, disappearing before she could fully focus. It was a silent reminder. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy, and the legends they had laughed at might one day return to guide or judge them. Kayla smiled faintly, her heart a mixture of awe and anticipation. Myths were no longer myths. They were reality, and the galaxy was ready to meet the truth. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of PX 237, the Solari waited, patient as ever, their watch unbroken, as humanity took its first real step into the legacy it had always been destined to inherit. Kayla returned to Earth with her team, but the weight of what they had uncovered followed her like a shadow. The Solari were no longer myth. They were guardians, ancient beings who had shaped humanity in ways the galaxy had never imagined. And with their awakening came responsibility. The United Interstellar Council convened a special session. Kayla presented every piece of evidence, holographic scans of the hibernation pods, samples from PX 237, and the recordings of the Solari's mental projections. The room was tense. Skeptics argued vehemently that this was fabrication, that humanity was being manipulated by some unknown alien intelligence. But the evidence was irrefutable. The debate lasted hours, but by the end, the council voted to officially acknowledge the Solari as a real, ancient species and potential allies, and potential threats if provoked. Kayla didn't relish the spotlight. She returned to her quiet quarters aboard the Astra Nomad, staring out at the stars. Every constellation seemed different now, every planet a possible home to myths long considered dead. She reflected on her encounter with the Solari leader, their tiger-marked form fading into the shadows of PX 237. The Guardian's final words echoed in her mind. Once humans know, the galaxy will never be the same. In the weeks that followed, humanity's understanding of itself and the universe began to shift. Academics pored over the Solari's architecture and technology, adapting knowledge far beyond human comprehension. Militaries debated whether to prepare defenses or establish diplomacy. Philosophers and spiritual leaders questioned the meaning of myths, morality, and destiny. Kayla watched it all unfold with a mixture of awe and unease. She had ignited a revolution in thought simply by proving that legends could walk among reality. One night, as she returned to her quarters, Kayla noticed something strange in the corner of her vision, a flicker of movement too quick to identify. A familiar sensation washed over her, the presence she had felt back on PX 237. She turned sharply, but the observation deck was empty. Then she heard a soft voice, not spoken aloud but resonating within her mind. You carry the burden well. Humanity is ready, but watch closely. The galaxy watches too. Kayla's heart raced. The Solari were still out there, still watching. But there was no fear, only respect, and a deep understanding that humanity's place in the cosmos had changed forever. In the following months, humanity made its first cautious contact with the Solari through carefully orchestrated transmissions. The messages were simple: acknowledgement of coexistence, promises of guidance, and warnings of patience. The Solari would not intervene directly, except in moments of true existential threat. Humanity had passed the first test, awareness. The second test, Kayla realized, had only just begun. Kayla stood on the observation deck one final time before heading out on her next mission, a deep space survey of systems untouched by human eyes. She felt a thrill she had never known, a combination of discovery, curiosity, and the humbling weight of responsibility. She whispered to herself, "We are not alone, and we never were." The stars stretched endlessly before her, glittering with possibilities. Somewhere, hidden in the darkness of PX 237 and countless other worlds, the Solari waited, patient as the eternal tide. But Kayla now carried their legacy in her mind, their story in her heart, and the knowledge that myths were never lies. They were truths waiting for the right time to be uncovered. And for the first time in her life, Kayla truly understood. Humanity's future was no longer written solely by itself. The guardians of legend had returned, and with them, the galaxy's infinite possibilities were within reach. Kayla took a deep breath, tightened her suit, and gave the command to the astronomad. Set course for the unknown. Let's meet the myths we've been chasing. As the ship leapt into the star-streaked void, Kayla smiled. Legends had walked among them once again, and this time, humanity would rise to meet them.